2024 is the best time it has ever been to be a non-technical founder. There are now more non-technical founders running startups valued at over $1 billion than ever before. And now I have the data to prove it. If you want to run a unicorn, invest in one, or have a unicorn CEO as your client, then this episode is for you. Welcome to the Tech for Non-Techies podcast. I'm your host, tech entrepreneur, executive coach, and Chicago Booth MBA, Sophia Matveeva. My aim here is to help you have a great career in the digital age. In a time when even your coffee shop has an app, you simply have to speak tech. On this podcast, I share core technology concepts, help you relate them to business outcomes, and most importantly, share practical advice on what you can do to become a digital leader today. If you want to have a great career in the digital age, this podcast is for you. Hello, smart people. How are you today? I have been absolutely obsessed with Griselda on Netflix. In fact, I am quite surprised that I've torn myself away from Griselda to record this podcast episode. I am heroic. Okay, in other exciting and far more relevant news, Aileen Lee has updated the unicorn list, and that's what we are talking about today. In this lesson, we will cover the most important points from Aileen Lee's research and what those points mean for founders, for investors, and for professionals who support the tech ecosystem like lawyers and bankers. I've pasted the link to her entire research in the show notes so you can dive deeper if you want to. And for those of you who don't know, Aileen Lee is a very renowned venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. She used to work at Kleiner Perkins, and then she set up her own fund called Cowboy Ventures. In her latest funding round, she raised $95 million for Cowboy Ventures, and she has already invested in lots of companies, but the one you've probably most heard of is the Dollar Shave Club. So she's pretty impressive. And it was Aileen Lee who coined the term unicorn in the first place. And when she first came up with it, she used it to describe US-based companies valued at over $1 billion, despite being less than a decade old. When describing the term, she told TechCrunch that we wanted the term to feel special because it's rare, almost magical, to build a unicorn company. And since then, since 2013, the term unicorn has spread globally, so it doesn't just refer to US companies today. But let's go back to 2013. What were you doing in 2013? 10 years ago, I was just coming back from India where I had been working, and I was about to start studying at Chicago Booth. But anyway, we digress. 10 years ago, Aileen Lee researched the unicorns in the US. She wanted to find out what the companies did, who the founders were, and whether there were any patterns. And this is important because the companies on that list have really defined what we see as tech success today. Back then, there were 39 unicorns in the US in total, and the vast majority of those unicorns, so around 80%, were consumer-facing companies like Uber, like Pinterest, like Facebook, and most of these companies were led by technical founders. So think Mark Zuckerberg. And literally, there were no female founders in unicorn founding teams. Woohoo! And that really was the era of the tech bro. So think Travis Kalanick. 33% of unicorn founders in 2013 went to Stanford, and most of them had technical degrees. This meant that investors were willing to fund Stanford computer science grad pretty much no matter what, to the point of ridiculousness. And I've seen this with my own eyes. I know some really young and delightful Stanford dropouts who got millions of dollars in funding for an idea, and it was just literally a piece of paper. It was an idea, and they got millions, and they spectacularly failed in their execution. And they were basically boys in their early 20s. So they had no experience in being adults. But despite not knowing how to be an adult, they got millions of dollars to start a company. So how do you think that went? Having said that, most unicorn founders back then were in their late 30s when they started their companies, and this is pretty much the same today. So the college dropout turned billionaire story is really, really rare. It is very unlikely to happen. In general, you need life and business experience to create a successful company, which makes sense, right? So if you're sitting there and if you're feeling sorry for yourself because you've let life go by and it's never going to happen for you, this is not true. And I have the data to prove it. So let's get on with it. The time is now. So let's have a look at what we have in today's unicorn list. Well, today there are 523 unicorns on that list. That is 14 times more than a decade ago. 14 times. 14x growth. I mean, that's more than most ambitious venture capitalists would even hope for. This is huge. And what's really interesting is that today, 78% of those unicorns are enterprise companies. And this is directly opposite to what we had 10 years ago. So on the first list, remember, the vast majority were consumer-facing companies. Today, it's mostly B2B. And this is really interesting. And I'm about to give you some more stats, and then we're going to get into what they mean. Here's the bit that I find most exciting. I'm going to quote directly from the research. About 40% of co-founders are non-technical. 60% majored in a STEAM field, 25% in business, 15% in humanities, and this is a big change. Back in 2013, 90% of CEOs had technical degrees. This bucks the founders must be technical stereotype, and according to People Data Labs, just a third of founders previously held software engineering roles. Oh my God, yes, this is happening. So now let's dissect these changes and see what they mean and what you can do with them. And this is relevant for founders, for investors, and for people who are supporting the tech ecosystem, like our friends in law and in banking and so on. So firstly, I believe there is a correlation between the rise of enterprise software companies and non-technical founders. Listen to this. A B2C company like Uber or like DoorDash grows through digital advertising. And mostly these apps get new users by advertising on Facebook. So if you think virality is a thing, it's a myth. Virality is basically something that very smart digital marketers and growth hackers make happen. Do not believe virality is a thing. If you want to have a successful consumer-facing app business, you are going to spend a lot of money on Facebook ads. And I've done both. I've done Facebook advertising and I've done enterprise sales. And I have done both for both of my companies. So for NT, my retail tech business, and also for Tech for Non-Techies, because some of you as consumers may have taken Tech for Non-Techies courses or been part of the membership. And some of you are Tech for Non-Techies corporate clients. And I can tell you that enterprise sales is a very, very different skill set from digital marketing. Enterprise sales is relationship sales. You have to meet your target customers, you have to talk to them, you have to listen to what's on their minds, and not just once, several times. And then you have to offer a tailored solution to solve the problem that they told you about. You really have to get to know your corporate clients. You have to form relationships. They have to get to know you. It's super personal. It's super human. And I would say that I've actually become friends with some of my corporate clients because these are real human relationships and it's a beautiful thing. Now let's look at B2C, and that's Facebook marketing. And that is a very metric-driven approach. You don't have to interact with humans that much. Basically, what you need is you need to get a creative person to make the actual ad, so the image or the video, but then you program Facebook to target that ad to your market, and then you just insert dollars. So yes, the creativity is in actually creating the ad, but you hire a person or an agency to do that. And then what you do is you track your campaign, and that's a really data-driven thing with dashboards and analytics. So you see where people are clicking, you see where people are watching your ad, and then you can add more money to the advert that works, and you can remove marketing spend from groups and from adverts that are not interested in what you're doing. So basically, to sum up, enterprise sales is very human. Digital marketing is very computerized. Deeply technical people are typically not as good at relationship building as their non-technical counterparts, which is why we see this correlation of enterprise software and non-technical founders. And now, my dear smart people, let's move on to investors and the financing part of the equation. So somebody is funding these unicorns run by technical founders. And those somebodies are writing very large checks. And so what does this mean? It means that the investor mindset has already changed at the very highest levels towards non-technical founders. I do think that there was this kind of stigma at the top about non-technical founders, but this has now changed and we've literally got the data to prove it. But this attitude has yet to trickle down everywhere. So, for example, I was speaking to the head of an angel investment network in London, and it was a few months ago, so it was in the latter half of 2023. And he very proudly told me that the angel investment network that he runs does not let non-technical founders pitch. Well, I say to this, the top VCs in Silicon Valley are doing it, and they are making billions of dollars. So maybe it's time to shift that policy if you are in the business of making money. So for the investors listening to this, do not discount opportunities just because a startup isn't run by an engineer. Your competitors are not discounting opportunities, and some of them are going to make a hell of a lot of cash. And now for the founders listening to this. And founders, you know you are my first love. There has never been a better time to be a non-technical founder. I have been smelling this change in the market for years, which is why I set up Tech for Non-Techies. And now I finally have the data to prove it. Thank you, Aileen Lee. I love you. So I'm literally going around everywhere and basically saying, I told you so to everybody. And it feels excellent. I may not have any friends left, but I don't care. I feel fantastic. So if you have an idea for a tech business, but you do not have the skills to build it, do not look at developers turned CEOs like Mark Zuckerberg and do not get discouraged. Look at the unicorn list instead and get encouraged. And my dear smart person, in celebration of this amazing piece of news, I have made the Tech for Non-Technical Founders course available to buy on demand on the Tech for Non-Techies website. In recent years, it has only been available in the membership, but now you can get it separately at techfornontechies.co/courses. So what are you waiting for? Make 2024 the year that you make this happen. And now, let's dive into what this change means for the tech ecosystem and the people who support it, like our friends in banking, in law, in accounting, and so on. So for you, for the professional services providers, there is going to be more and more opportunity for you as more people enter the market, because now non-technical founders have a real fighting chance and they're getting funded. And the technical founders are also still here. They haven't gone anywhere. So this just means that there's more room for innovation, which is exciting. And this means that more people will start companies, more people will raise money, and therefore more people will need your services. That is amazing. And to capture this opportunity, you need to be the advisors who understand your clients better than your competitors do, because your business is all about relationships. The more you understand how your client's business operates, the better you can serve them. So learn to speak tech, learn how to ask them the right questions, and learn how to understand their concerns, because this is how you build these long-term client relationships where your clients really feel seen and understood by you. And also, this is important, your clients are going to look really different to what you might hold as a stereotype. Because instead of a young tech bro in a hoodie, you might be faced with a sensible-looking business person who is in their 40s, who is using technology to solve a business problem. This is what's most likely the founder is actually going to look like. And I think that there's some level of comfort to that because you're probably a bit more familiar with that person. Also, in the research, and this is for all of you, so for everybody listening, there is really interesting data on where founders have worked before. So listen up. Many founders have previously worked in tech, but they're not necessarily technical. If you want to go down this path, maybe getting a job at Google is going to be a good idea as an interim step. Also, many of the unicorn founders have had some sort of entrepreneurial experience before, but that entrepreneurial experience might not look remotely relevant, but it matters. And I'm going to show you what I mean because I have actually seen the same thing too. Most of my students who have been most likely to succeed as non-technical founders have already started a business. So, for example, one of my students is a wonderful, very smart woman called Dr. Marilyn Sandor. She is a dentist who created a telehealth company called Good Checkup. And so she created an app to first treat her dental patients, and now it is being used by more and more dentists across the US to treat their patients. So Dr. Sandor was not a doctor working in a hospital and getting a salary. She was running her own dental practice, which she created from scratch. So she was an entrepreneur. She knew about marketing, she knew about sales, she had ran advertising, she had hired and she had fired, she knew how to manage her cash flow. So she was already a successful businesswoman. She needed to add technology knowledge to her existing knowledge as an entrepreneur. And yeah, this took some work, but this wasn't a huge hill to climb, especially because I was her teacher and the Tech for Non-Technical Founders course is really clear and really easy to understand. And that's the one that I've made available for you to buy too. So what I want you to see is that she already had this entrepreneurial skill set and then she added the technical skill set on top of that. And obviously this meant that she'd already climbed half of the hill and therefore was much more likely to be successful. By the way, if you want to learn about her journey, I interviewed her on this very podcast, and it's episode 142 called From Dentist to Tech Founder. And I've linked it in the show notes, and I highly recommend that you listen to it if you have entrepreneurial plans too. When I see a banker or a management consultant with an MBA and a tech idea, I honestly get worried because often those people, as smart as they underestimate how hard entrepreneurship is. Because honestly, I worked in a private equity firm. I worked really, really hard. My MBA was also really, really hard work, but it is nothing compared to entrepreneurship. And that's even before you add the technology aspect to it. So, my dear smart people, if this sounds like you, if you are somebody who has been working in a very prestigious job and you want to start a company, my advice to you is start some sort of side hustle today. And it doesn't even have to be relevant to what your startup idea is. Even if you don't need the money, create something out of nothing and sell it. Learn how to manage startup cash flow. Learn to get customers without the fancy Goldman Sachs or McKinsey brand behind you. Because this experience is going to set you up for success down the line. And now let's get to the last stat, which is going to end this lesson on a super duper high note. So listen to this. The opportunity in front of us is huge, no matter what part you want to play in the tech ecosystem. Because less than 10% of today's Fortune 500 companies are considered to be tech companies. And I know that it might feel like tech companies are everywhere, but actually look at the data. They're actually a very small proportion of the entire market. This means that you and we're still at the beginning of the tech revolution. Digital transformation is still in its early stages. And this is amazing because this means that there is so much opportunity ahead of us. And that is so, so exciting. So learn to speak tech today. Learn what developers do. Grasp the basics of AI and understand how an app goes from idea to a live existing thing. This is how you set yourself up for success in the decades to come. Just by listening to this podcast, you are already taking a proactive approach towards educating yourself and towards taking your future in your own hands. And I'm really proud of you. Well done for investing in yourself today and for every other time that you have listened to this podcast. You're making a very smart and long-term investment in your future. So give yourself a pat on the back. I'm giving you a pat on the back. If this podcast episode inspired you to start your own venture, because there is literally no better time than there has ever been to be a non-technical founder, then the Tech for Non-Technical Founders course is exactly what you need. The link to it is in the show notes, or just go to techfornontechies.co/courses and see all of the information there. People have used it to create tech businesses as non-technical founders, and to transition into careers in tech investing and to become sought after startup advisors. So if you want to get these results, check out the Tech for Non-Technical Founders course. And on that note, have a wonderful day, and I shall be back in your delightful smart ears next week. Ciao.